In this video, we're going to talk about personal budgeting. So let's talk about first what budgeting is. So it's the process of creating a plan for how you're going to save and spend your money or your available income. So once your employer has taken out deductions, so that could be like for taxes or insurance, the amount that's left is called your take-home pay. So our first example that we're going to do, looking at Saya, we're going to calculate her monthly pay and then also how much she earns in a year. So she works full-time as an executive assistant. She has a check for $2,021.07 deposited into her checking account every other Friday. So what does she earn in a year? What is her average monthly pay? So we're going to start by calculating her monthly pay, and then we'll take that and estimate her yearly pay. And so a quick estimate of her monthly pay would just be to double her biweekly pay. And this is an estimate because there's different number of days in every month, and there's different number of Fridays in each month. And so it doesn't work out necessarily that it's the exact same every month, but this is a really good estimate. So I'm just going to take that 2021.07 and I'm going to multiply it by 2. So 2021.07 times 2. And that's going to give me a quick estimate of her monthly take-home. So her monthly take-home is approximately $4,042.14. This is per month. Okay. A more accurate calculation would be to find the yearly pay and then divide it by 12 to get the monthly pay. So let's do that, and then we'll look at that number compared to what we just estimated. So to find the yearly pay, I'm going to take her biweekly pay, so $2,021.07. That's twice, it's every other Friday. And I'm going to multiply that by 26 because there's 52 weeks in a year. So that means if we have that, so if we take half of 52, there's 26 bi-weekly pays in 1 year. So 2021.07 times 26 equals, so this gives her a yearly pay, and this is her exact yearly take-home pay, $52,547.82. So this is per year. And then all we have to do is divide that by 12 to get the monthly pay. So I take that number and I divide by 12. And notice in my calculator, I just left that answer in there and I just hit divide by 12. It automatically takes the previous line and divides that by 12, making it easier. And so now we're going to divide this by 12 and we're going to get a monthly pay of $4,378. And if we round 0.985, that 5 tells us to bump that 8 up to a 9, so I'm going to say 99 cents. So you can see it's a little bit off from our estimate, but the estimate was still pretty good. Okay, so let's check out another example. So calculating repeated spending. So this is helpful when you're buying things frequently. If you want to just, add up and see how much you're spending altogether, it has quite a big impact when you look at the total as opposed to, the individual cup of coffee. And so for the first one, let's say you buy 2 lattes out every day at $4.25 a cup. How much would you spend in 1 year? And so if we're spending $4.25 each cup, or each latte, and you're buying 2 every day, I'm just going to multiply that by 2. And so we end up getting $8.50. That's how much we spend per day on coffee. And then we want to know how much do you spend in 1 year. So I'm going to take that daily amount and I'm going to multiply it by 365 since there's 365 days in a year. So I'm just going to take $8.50 times 365 and I end up getting $3,102.50. And so you can see it's really, this is a really good exercise because it might seem on a daily basis, oh, no big deal to spend $4.25 on a latte. But when you multiply it, and see the big impact you have over a year, it's actually a lot of money. So let's do that for example B. So if you spend $8.43 for lunch at Subway 3 times a week, how much do you spend during a 16-week semester? And so you always start with the smaller time increment first. So we're going to do the 3 times a week first. first and figure out how much this person spends at Subway per week, and then we'll move to the longer 16-week semester. So we're going to take our $8.43, and if they're getting it 3 times a week, we're just going to multiply that by 3. So $8.43 times 3, and we get $25.29. So that's how much they're spending per week. And then if we want for the 16-week semester, we're going to multiply that by 16. And I can just hit times 16 in my calculator to get $404.64. So total for the semester. So again, you know, if you look at the individual Subway trip, you know, it's not so bad. But then when you look at the total, you really get to see the impact of the spending choices. Okay, so in this next part, we're going to look at a type of budget. So the 50-30-20 budget, this is one type of budget. There are all kinds of budgets out there. You know, if you just do a quick Google search, you'll see lots of different advice out there. And obviously, you got to do your own research and find what's right for you. But this is just one example of a budget that someone could have. And basically, this budgeting system, the way it works is the 50 stands for 50% for necessities, 30% for wants, so like luxuries that you don't necessarily need, and then 20% to either save or pay down your debt. And so let's kind of go through each of these categories. So the 50% for necessities. When you think of a necessity, they could either be fixed necessities, you know, necessities where the amount that you pay is fixed maybe every single month or every single week. So these necessities might be like rent or your mortgage, maybe insurance, maybe your cell phone bill or child care, internet, even student loans. And I'm sure there's a lot more here, but this gives you an idea. Variable necessities are payments that are going to go up or down each payment period depending on maybe how much you use. So like gas for your car and your home, and then, you know, utilities that might change. There's a note here. So it says this category might include things that can be reduced with difficulty, but are currently commitments, like the monthly payment on an expensive luxury car. So you might think, okay, so if I have this expensive luxury car, it's not necessarily a necessity because I could have a cheaper vehicle that would get me where I needed to go. But if it's a commitment that's already been made, then it's considered in this 50% because, you know, it might be hard to get out of that payment amount. And then the 30%, so that's for things like luxuries. So they might seem normal, but if you were in a financial crisis, they could be stopped. So example might be like Netflix or any type of recurring charges. So like, you know, if you have a recurring charge, it seems like they have them for everything these days, for, you know, for maybe an app on your phone, like a workout app or something like that. There's a lot of recurring charges that might fit in this category. And then variable luxuries, you know, and these are luxuries where they're going to change depending on, you know, what you do each month. So maybe dining out every time you go to a restaurant is not the same price, so it depends where you go. So maybe unnecessary new clothes. And this is unnecessary new clothes. Obviously, there's clothing in the necessities category too, but maybe, you know, going out to the movies, things like that. And then the 20% just saving or paying down debt. So having that small cushion can really help people avoid, you know, sticky situations, and even interest rate debt situations like payday loans, where people are paying, you know, a high interest rate to get an advance on their paycheck, and that ends up making them have less money in the long run. So having that cushion can really help avoid that situation. So let's do a couple of examples, or actually we're just gonna do one example involving the 50-30-20 budget, and that's this example with Angel. So if Angel's take-home pay is $3,000 per month, how much should they spend per month on the following categories? So we're going to assume they're trying to follow this 50-30-20 rule. And so we're going to use just what we know, our knowledge about percentages. So when we want to take a percent of a certain number, we multiply. So if I want to find 50% of 3,000, then I'm going to take the decimal of 50%. So I move my decimal, which is always at the end of the number if you don't see it, 2 spots to the left. So I'm going to take 0.50 and I'm going to multiply that by 3,000. And that's going to give me $1,500. So that's the amount of money that is going to be set aside for necessities. And then I'm going to take my next category is 30%, and that would be for wants or luxuries. So I'm going to take 30%, which would be 0.30, and multiply that by 3,000. And when I do that, I get 900. So that's going to be for wants. Okay. And then my last percentage, my 20, so that's going to be for my saving or my paying down debts. It's going to be 0.20 and then times $3,000, and that gives me 600. And a quick thing you can do to make sure that you did everything right is just add these totals. And so this is for savings. I'm just going to write this down real quick. Savings or debt. But if we add all these up, 1,500 plus 900 plus 600, you end up getting the 3,000, and that's a really quick way to check that you were on the right track. Okay, so we're going to do one more example with budgeting. This is a little different. We're not going to do the budget, the 50-30-20 rule with this one. But let's say Jason brings home this amount of money per month and has the necessities below, that expenses that he has to pay for. So part A said how much money is left after these expenses are paid. And so, you know, we have a couple of options. You could take his take-home pay and subtract each of these one at a time. You could also add these all up. That's what I'm going to do. So I'm going to take my calculator and I'm just going to add 542, the first expense, plus 189.65. plus $55 plus 130 plus 250 plus 155. Enter. And so I get a total of $1,321.65. And so this represents his total expenses for the month, his necessities. And so that we want to know for part A how much money is left after these expenses are paid. So for part A, we're going to find out how much is left. We're just going to take his take-home pay, so $2,146.79, and we're going to subtract the expenses, so $1,321.65. So we're going to take $2,146.79 minus 1,321.65, and we get a total of $825.14 that he has left over. So $825.14, and that's the money that he has left. And then lastly for B, what percent of his budget is used for these expenses? So round to the nearest tenth of a percent. So it's important to know that whenever you're asked to find a percent and then round, you always want to round last. So you're going to find the percentage first, and then after you get the percent, you're going to round at the very end. And so for part B, if we want to find the percent, I'm going to use that percent equation. If you watch my percent video, you'll have seen that I talked about a percent equation where we take percent of the whole, and that's equal to the part, okay? And so we want to know what percent. I don't even know the percent, so what percent of means times his total paycheck. So that's where I'm going to put 2,146.79 is equal to his expenses. So I'm not going to put the 825. That's what's left. I want to know what percent of his budget is used for these expenses. So I'm going to say that equals his expenses, which is $1,321.65. And then I'm going to put an X in this blank since that's a variable that I don't know the percentage, so it makes sense to put a variable there. And then I'm just going to solve this equation, and I'm going to solve it by dividing both sides by the number that's being multiplied by X, because then that makes that number go away. because any number divided by itself is just 1, so those cancel out and make 1, and then I'm going to divide the right-hand side by the same number. So in my calculator, I'm just going to take the 1321.65, so my expenses, and divide by 2146.79, and you could have jumped at the very beginning. You could have just not have written this equation, and that's fine too, and just divide the part divided by the whole to get the percentage, and that's a good way to think about it too. And so my decimal here, I'm just going to write it over here on the side, is 0.6156. We've got a lot of digits here, so I'm going to write them all down. And then I'm going to think about, so remember in the beginning I said, let's find the percent first and then round. And so right now this is a decimal. It's not the percentage. So I'm going to take that number and I'm going to move the decimal 2 spots to the right to get the percent. So to get the percent, now I have 61.564095. Okay, that's the percentage. Now I round. So, and the direction said round to the nearest tenth of a percent. So the tenths place is where you see this 5. And so I look to the right of it, and that 6 tells me to increase the 5 to a 6. So my final answer is 61.6%. And so this tells you that his necessities, okay, are 61.6% of his income. And I know in the beginning I actually said it's not a 50-30-20 problem, and it isn't technically, but you can kind of use that budgeting rule to kind of, you know, judge whether or not his expenses are too much. So this person might say, you know what, that's a big percentage of my income. You know, I want to stay more towards the 50%, so maybe I need to look at some of these necessary expenses and see if I can cut some of those out or decrease them in any way.